Hello and welcome to the WellCare Podcast by Citius Retreats. My name is George Bownes and I'm a sports and exercise medicine consultant, and I spent a lot of time in my career working in high performance sport, helping athletes to win medals, trophies and championships across international football, premiership football, international rugby, premiership rugby, winter and summer Olympic sports, as well as Wimbledon. I've been very fortunate to work with some incredible practitioners across this space, and it's been a real joy and pleasure to work in it. Citius Retreats, therefore, brings together a community of similar background people with high levels of high performance sport, as well as private practice. And what it does is then blends with incredible experts in wellness to create a highly bespoke environment, giving guests who come along a similar experience to what athletes would appreciate and get. Today, the WellCare Podcast is brought to you by IBSA, who've kindly sponsored the event. Sports medicine is a team game, and I'd like to welcome to the front my co-host for today and for this series, Nicola Graham.
Thank you, George. Hi, nice to meet you all. So my background is physiotherapy, so I come from kind of a clinical background, but now sit more in the commercial side and strategy advice around human performance. And we are super excited to have Richie Norton joining us for this first episode. So Richie, if you'd like to come and join us as well.
What an intro.
So we haven't done one of these live, so we'll see how it goes, really.
It's going to be great. What could possibly go wrong?
So should we kick off?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so as I said, welcome to the WellCare Podcast, the first episode here, and we're really pleased that Richie's joining us. Richie Norton is a former rugby player turned human performance coach and leadership. He's got an arsenal of different techniques that he uses around breathwork, mindset and physical training. And he's really, when he's using those techniques, aiming to get everyone's true potential out of them. So we're going to have a lovely conversation around wellness. Richie is also a globetrotter. He's just returned from India. And so it's kind of a perfect time to have that conversation around what does wellness mean to you, Richie?
Yeah, interesting start, actually. India was quite an adventure. You say globetrotter, that was a out of the blue trip on a motorbike that I felt like it almost killed me, actually. So I'm not sure we want to go too deep into that, but it was a good story. I'm honoured to be here. I've never actually done a live podcast before, so thanks for coming to see us. Wellness, I mean, that's quite a big subject. I've been in this game about 15 years and I feel like I'm still on that journey of exploring it, and I would say wellness is quite a big subject. It's a place that we get bombarded with, and I like to think that it's an experiment that we're going to do for the rest of our lives. Wellness is fitness, yes, but it's also mindset, it's recovery, it's good relationships, it's getting better sleep, and it's personal to everybody. It's like, which ones are closest to you? And I'm here now thinking, well, I'm so honored to be able to hold space and hopefully inspire a few people on the way. But I still feel like I'm at the very beginning of my journey. I'm very fortunate to coach people around the world of all different ages and levels of ability. And my mission is definitely to try and simplify wellness and give people tools that are accessible and relatable and easy to digest, so you can hopefully pass it forwards. I think we overcomplicate it sometimes. So I'm going to try and speak about making wellness more accessible and something for everybody to find a way on that path. And we'll probably unpack a little bit more of that in this conversation, I hope.
And that's probably a perfect point at where you talk about that kind of journey. So when did that journey start for you, and why or how?
When did it start? You could say, well, I could say, I played rugby till my late 20s, and if you'd asked me to do a yoga class or do some breath work or meditation, I probably would have laughed and gone, no, don't do all of that fluffy stuff or that woo-woo thing. And I eventually got injured and it kind of ended my career quite abruptly at a very early start of where I thought I was going to be my prime. And someone tried to get me to do breath work to try and calm down a busy mind and all the stress I was feeling and the loss of identity. And I had a few yoga teachers rock up in their beads and their bandanas, try and make me sort of adopt this more mindful approach to training, and I was having none of it. And then it took me to go to Australia in my 30s, so I did a few years of navigating this new chapter in my life after rugby ended and getting it wrong a lot and really losing my way mentally in a bad place. Physically, I'd let myself go in a major way. So it felt like a real hill to climb to try and find my way back into a happy, healthy place. And I met a yoga teacher who happened to be quite cute, female yoga teacher who happened to be quite cute, and she got my attention, and she found a way to communicate with me
Emotionally, yeah.
Emotionally. I realised I set myself up there. But it was just how she got where I was, and she understood I needed it simplified. I needed to learn the language of understanding my body and what it was capable of. And I started to feel more open. I started to feel like I was really connecting with my breath. And at the end of this class I did with her, I was in Sydney. I'd done this movement practice. I sort of felt all the clicks and the cracks, and my body was so like resistant to let go. And at the end I did a breathwork practice, which was kind of a yogi practice, which again I'd not really sort of come across before. And at the end of the session, I just felt like this complete bliss, and I felt this real sense of calm, and I lost where I was, and my mind started to go quiet, and I started to feel like my body really let go of all this resistance. And I never felt that before. And as a rugby boy who was, alpha and a big ego, I sort of surrendered for the first time. And that's kind of how she explained the whole idea of like being more mindful of how you treat your body, how you treat your mind, and how powerful it can be. So long story short is I then learned how to surf. I felt connected to the ocean, and I went on this real spiritual journey hanging out with all these cool Brazilian surfers who happened to do yoga, and they were all ripped, and I was like, yeah, I'm inspired by that. And I started to think like there was so much more to just lifting weights in the gym. Like that's all I'd done, that's all I knew. And ended up going to a college there where I learned to become a trainer, and learned how to do capoeira, and I became a teacher, and it just opened up this whole new world for me to be more connected to nature, my breath, the way I moved. And because all my injuries went away, I was like this living proof that you didn't have to end at that injury. I didn't have to accept it was all over, which in my head it was. So, yeah, I mean, I couldn't wait to learn more. So I just went head first into learning from all the best practitioners. I spoke to everybody that I could connect with and relate to, mainly men, because I was also another guy that was able now to speak from personal experience that I knew other guys would be dealing with the same things as me. So, yeah, I just thought I can now be someone that can have an impact on people's lives in a positive way. I'm going to start aiming at rugby players because that's the people I knew, and it just grew from there. So, and that was 15 years ago.
Wow. What I think is really interesting there, though, is that earlier part in your career, or when someone said, go do yoga, that was not the time that you were open to it, or so it took your ability to go, now I'm ready for it, or because I think sometimes we find in practices that people try something and they're like, they try it once and then that's it. It's not for me. Where we're trying to kind of, suppose, open those conversations that type or that instructor or that might not have been for you, or that time in your life, but there'll be other points where it is an important part of your life, because we're on a ebb and flow journey all the time.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was one of those people who tried yoga like for a good 3 or 4 years. I did Bikram, I did all the Ashtanga. I tried a lot of yoga. I really was like, people keep telling me this is good for me. But I don't get it. I'm so competitive and I can't do that move and I can't do that. I'm just a ball of sweat at the end of a class and I just like feel so frustrated. I can't relax. Shavasana. And it just took one teacher that I got and they got me and they used a language that I could relate to. And it took me 4 years to find that person. But the point was I didn't give up. And I think like a lot of people do give up. They get told they should be doing this, going to do that, have that session, have that treatment, have that therapy. It was not for me. I didn't get that feeling. I didn't get the help I needed. And think about how many people in their lifetime give up because they didn't quite reach that level that they thought they were going to, get to, or because it worked for someone else and it didn't work for them. Oh, that means that they're broken, or they're not going to be able to do it. And so many people give up when they're that close to maybe finding that right person. I wanted to be that right person for someone. And I knew because I was a man who played rugby and I had all these failures and I didn't succeed the first time, I knew there'll be someone else out there that'll be in exactly the same position as me. So I thought, right, this is my mission. And I thought about like all the coaches I get to work with. I'm like, well, you might not get it now, but part of the journey of you failing and actually not giving up is part of what's making you the best trainer you possibly can be. And I think about that with therapists. I think about with all the senior people that I work with in the city. They just think that this is their role, this is their job, this is their position. And it might be that one lesson you get from doing something wrong or meeting someone that inspires you just to pivot a little bit and then you get your lane and that path opens up. And because I work with lots of people at different ages, at different levels of ability, different professions, it's the same thing with everybody. You've just got to like ignite that spark. It might mean a complete change of direction or almost like reinventing yourself, but I think that's possible now in this world, Yeah.
Because we've got such a lovely live audience here, I thought it'd be good to just kind of just reflect on who's actually here, given what you've just said there.
Yeah.
So if we just go briefly around the room, we've got GPs in longevity, psychologists, physios, orthopedic surgeons who apparently are doctors, nutritionists, and then it keeps going on and on and on around the room, yoga, Pilates, bar instructors. So it's amazing how many people are now super engaged in the wellness conversation. What is generally, when people come to you, what are the main things that people come and approach you for? What are the things they want to either learn or to change about themselves?
So if I think about the human being, not even think about their profession, I like to try and find something deeper within them that can maybe unlock that doubt that might have occurred or appeared out of nowhere, or they're a bit stuck in the routine. How can you improve, and why do you want to improve? Why is it worth investing in more? Why is it worth digging a little bit deeper? Why is it worth maybe taking a step back to really audit your life to maybe see where you can make improvements? So if you can think of that in a professional way, but when I think about the human being, especially as we get a bit complacent or we lose our way or we get injured or we get a bit bored or something happens in our life that causes us to stop, what is the reason you want to keep trying? And people come looking for that level of insight or inspiration or motivational story or like a secret hack to become physically better or mentally sharper or more focused or sleep better. It's hard to say if there's like one thing that everyone comes to me about. They just want to try and be a little bit better or overcome something that's currently challenging them. And I think the core of all of those answers sit within the reason you're here and the reason you want to wake up every day and give it your best effort. I think so many people are in this flow of just rituals and habits and routines that aren't serving them, aren't allowing them to grow. And without getting, that's quite a deep conversation that we could go into, like, why are you trying to be better today? What's the real driving force to you try and be better at what you do in your profession? You as a partner, you in your relationship. And without being morbid, I think that we're given this gift to be here, and some people take that for granted. We get too busy focusing on the profession and what we're trying to become and what our expectations of ourselves, we lose sight with how special the little things are. And we take them for granted. And I think it's not until those things get taken away or you're forced to pay attention to it, you really don't start to really cherish and take real priority in like really nurturing those little things that make you you. And I say that because I've had my own personal journey in being in those places, and I've lost friends, and I've had big awakenings. I've been given lots of chances to kind of be here and find my true purpose. And on my last point on that is purpose, and your reason for being here can just be, I'm going to try and help others along the way. I'm going to try and be of service. I'm going to try and just be kind today. I'm going to try and help that person get a little bit better today. And that's going to be something I'm proud about. And that could be something that gets you to do it again tomorrow. And I think they become like building blocks of like you achieving the very best you can, because you lay the foundations of those really simple things that make you a good person. I'll stop talking, but I mean, I could go, but I hope that's coming through what I'm trying to say in terms of that message, but you can steer that same energy into anything you want to achieve.
I think that 100% will resonate with everybody in the room, because everyone, whatever you do, particularly in that sort of health and well-being space, you're essentially coaching, aren't you? It's a form of coaching, and it's trying to bring the best out of that person and then aligning with other people that can help you to give to that individual so that they can be the best version of them for their environment they're in. I know you talk about work there, but it's just as important in home life, if not more so, because they're the people you go back to every night to pick you up when you are a bit broken, or there to, celebrate the wins when they come along.
Yeah.
But I think the interesting aspect there is, and this is not the way the conversation I thought was going to go in some ways, but that's
why we don't plan questions, Nicola. Don't plan questions.
But from the point of view of like, if we start to talk about kind of modalities then, so like breath work, hot and cold, different kind of tools, how important are they, or how important is what you get out of that? Because you've talked more, I'd say, about the person and the mindset and the maybe kind of changes that happen very much internally. What do those modalities of hot, cold, breath work, what are they adding to that? Or how do you marry that all together?
Okay, definitely could be another big answer. I'll try and simplify even more. And then the reason the reason I say that is because I like to provide context.
Yeah.
I can only speak from my own personal experience. This is my profession. This is what I live and breathe. This is what I'm here to do. But I also realize it's a minefield for a lot of people to get it right, to find the doorway into them becoming a little bit better into wellness and taking better care of themselves. Some people really respond well to a cold bath. Some people are like, nah, not for me. I'm not going to do that. I can't even get access to one on a regular basis. Maybe that's not their doorway. Maybe that's not where I'm going to steer them. The reason breathwork is such a big part of everything that I do now is because I know it's something everyone's doing. And breathwork could be that form of practice. It often is the doorway to someone becoming more mindful, feeling a bit more grounded, getting a good night's sleep, calming down that busy mind, recovering a bit quicker, or also just being more conscious, being more mindful of what's coming up for you that day. So I'm steering someone to being a better athlete. I'm going to look at how they're breathing in every situation, but it needs to be trained. It needs to be practiced for it to be something that becomes more of a subconscious support for you. But going for a walk in a field with someone because they live in the city and they never leave the four walls of their office, you get people breaking down because they've taken their shoes off and have got them to walk barefoot for a little bit and hug a tree. I don't get people to hug trees that often, but sometimes, but just going down the other end of the spectrum, sometimes that might be a chance for someone to get a little bit of space from all the busyness of the noise of being in the city. And that could be a chance for them to go and just talk and actually express what's coming up for them. And that might have been what's imprisoned them in them speaking their truth and actually saying what they feel. So I think there's a different tool for everybody, but it's about using these tools yourself to be able to actually speak from experience which one worked for you and speak from that experience, so that really resonates and you can really connect with that person. So I think about like doctors and therapists and people that are there to try and do good and help someone in your profession. You've got to speak to the human first and maybe understand a little bit more about what's got them to where they are, to really give them tools to go away and keep doing the work when you've stopped the treatment, which is often the reason we don't get buy-in, right?
Yeah, you've got to fully understand that person and what they need at that time, like you say, because as beautiful as the BodyLab is, as we're here today, and they've got amazing facilities of cryotherapy, hyperbaric, flotation tanks, they've got the gym, they've got the infrared, so many options, but it's curating what they might want at a particular time. What's their access point? Like you said, maybe hug a tree, maybe just take your shoes off. And then that leads into the next bit along the journey around where they need to go with it. Yes, and that's why working with people who've got so much experience makes a big difference, doesn't it? In terms of, exactly what you're saying, you know, what are you open-minded to? Is it the practitioner or is it the actual practicality that you're doing?
Yeah.
Is the piece that maybe you need that now, maybe you don't need that now.
Yeah.
But what are those things in the toolbox which are available? And the coach or the practitioner, whatever you want to be called, that you're working with needs to know and understand what those different things can add for where you're at. And the longer you work with someone and the better understanding you have of them, the more helpful you can be around advising them.
Yeah, definitely. So you just touched on like facilities and having all this tech and data feedback. It's becoming more and more of like a guide or a controller to help navigate what the next step might be, all right? So amazing facility like this, for example, if you want to like really understand what's making that person tick and get behind the scenes of how they move, how they breathe, how they respond to the stressor of the cold, you know, when I'm doing physical testing, like anybody, you want to sort of see where their end range is, and you want to get that feedback. So that extra detail, that extra attention gives you more insight into how you can really maybe help that person with other things that you might not have considered. So that comes down to the trainer, obviously the facility. When you've got a space where you can really tick all these boxes, you end up getting all this great feedback and insight to then go, actually, there's some things here that we're going to focus on first, but that's definitely your entry level into feeling better. Gives them confidence. They know they're in safe hands. And it usually then breaks down the barriers of trusting you a little bit more to let you in. And that's not just mentally, emotionally, this is physically, you know, and again, some people are more receptive to some things. Some people want to see the data and they see the breakdown and the markers, right? I love that too, it's great. But don't be governed by that. Don't be like, make that be how you judge how you're responding and how you're progressing. Let people understand also how that's making you feel, knowing that stuff. And I think when you can build that relationship with anybody, no matter what profession you're in, you end up just building this really strong connection, and you're empowering people to then go, this is helping, I need to keep this up. And that's how you get buy-in to hopefully have people keep coming back to you because they love working with you. But also you're creating this way of living that maybe involves lots of tech and amazing facility, but it's when they go home, how they're speaking about the experience and also in maybe telling other people. So they also want to come and see you. I think it's just a lovely way to look at it, and it's all about wanting to do good and provide value. I think a lot of people just look to tick boxes, or they have a process, and if it doesn't work, oh well. I think there's so much more we could integrate, no matter what the profession is, by just trying to work a little bit deeper under the surface and getting that feedback and insight. That's how I look at it anyway.
There's quite a few things kind of that I think one thing that our conversations we've had with people is that permission. Like sometimes actually the practitioner is just giving someone the permission to go and try something that they haven't had before or they haven't taken on themselves. So I think that's an important part. The other aspect is just that integration. Like there are, like professions are siloed. They can become quite passionate about their own profession, and so that multidisciplinary team, while it may exist in kind of sporting settings or some facilities, it's not always the common practice. So as you say, having experienced practitioners that aren't, and it's a saying that's been said before that I quite like. It's not upselling, it's upserving. So that thought of actually how do we serve people more is a really nice way of, I think, bringing in that actually I may not be the right person for you now, but it doesn't mean that your health journey, or we've always got things that we can improve in our own health at any point. And so why don't you try this now? Or why? Yeah. So there's always options there.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, just my 2 pence on that. If you have a circle of professionals like we have in the room here today, and you trust each other and respect each other, you build community. And you're a trusted network that if you are referred by someone, it's like, oh, they've got my best interests at heart, I'm definitely going to trust the next person. But it just becomes part of that journey of learning a bit more about themselves. It's never a bad experience. Well, it could be, but I mean, you've lost a client and you've maybe not done the best job. So maybe sometimes you assess people like I would do and go, I'm not the right person for you. When it comes to like the psychiatric stuff and the mental health side of things, I have a personal insight I can share, and I have, I guess I could paint a bit of a picture of like what we could experiment with and see how you respond. But I think there's so much power in going, you know what, the next chapter for you or the next step for you is going to see this person. I'll still be there. But I just think knowing that you've just been part of that person's journey is also something just to back yourself, and rather than going, I've lost business. Sometimes, I'm like, oh, I've got to be a great client, but he's not for me. I could wing it, but no, it's not very professional. We've kind of maybe all been on the edge of it there somewhere, but I think sometimes you've got to like trust people will have to go on that journey, and you were part of that, so I think that's a nice way to look at it.
Go on then.
You've got a massive kind of arsenal and tool set within your own practice, experiences, people that you've worked with and things. What do you see as kind of the future, or where do you see wellness going? I think I like the kind of alluded to the data side, because I think that's really interesting from a wearables and just the personalization and what we're getting out of people from the point of view of kind of either biological age versus chronological age, and all these different markers that we can kind of get from our home now as well. Are there any, and this is without kind of taking away the simplicity aspect as well, what do you see as kind of the future, and where do you feel things are going and the conversations that you have with people?
I personally, I'm always steering people to be more aware of what they're feeling and what they notice and what they're sensing, for that better understanding and connection with their gut health and their mindset and their energy and their behavior and their attitude. Because for me, the more the person becomes connected to their own signals, because they listen more, they're more self-aware, rather than that robotic mindset of suppressing things that are coming up and ignoring the signs, which is why they end up getting injured, or they've not done enough work in that area. I like to think that people are going to become more in control, more self-aware, more empowered. But that comes usually from them learning a bit about themselves, either from some data, doing some tests, doing some examinations, working with some professionals, getting that feedback, experimenting and understanding how they've responded to that treatment, to know that really worked for me, that's going to become part of my future practice. So that they find these building blocks to become stronger, better educated. We are going to have to use data. It's going to be part of the future. The tech is a good way for people to learn. Getting blood work and getting treatment to see how you respond and if you're healing well from that treatment. We've all had injuries, or most people have had. That really worked for me. Just like breath work. Breath work doesn't need tech. It doesn't need any real feedback other than that person going, this practice really had made me feel good. I responded this way. So I'm a real believer and pusher of people becoming more in control of what they're capable of and how they can heal in more natural ways than they think once they start to take that ownership of a practice and rituals and that self-care that really can do more than people think.
I think that intuitive part is really interesting because I'm seeing and following people who have used like Whoop for a couple of years and they're like, I now understand myself. I now don't need it because it doesn't add anything else at this point. So you do use that data to inform what you were already feeling, but at a much deeper level because you've actually got red, yellow, green kind of put to it in some way as well. But then maybe they're like, actually, I know that now. Or some people still find it motivating. So it's not, I think the data part is really interesting, but it may, again, be a part and not forever for some people, but others really love it because it keeps them engaged and you've got that constant. So it's so personal as well.
Yeah, going back to that first point, it's a personal journey.
Yeah.
And it's going to be different for everybody. If you feel powerless, it's usually lack of information or lack of confidence, or maybe they've never been there before. So that's your cue to maybe go down that path and experiment. You're going to keep learning so much about yourself. And if you're not prioritizing the little things that often don't need data, you're missing a big part of you thriving. And, things like, relationships needing to be, the people, the friendships, the personal relationships, these all make a big difference. Training, maybe you don't need to do every bit of fitness that's out there on the market right now, but we all know we need to take care of our joints. We need to do resistance training. Maybe it doesn't need to be all the time. So it's finding that sweet spot. If data gives you all those tools and insights to really refine what exactly works for you in that point in time, looking at hormones, female, male, all these different things, if you don't understand the markers and you're not sure how you're responding to these things, you're not really able to get that sweet spot right. And I think a lot of people just wing it and just make it up until they're forced to do something about it, where you can prevent a lot. And prevention is better than getting the treatment right.
Exactly. Well, you go back to the beginning of your conversation and sort of story was, I was broken. People told me to go and do this. I've been trying really hard at it, but I didn't necessarily get the feedback that I wanted to get from it until you found the right practitioner. Then it all clicked for you. Yeah. And people kind of get, we talk about data a lot, don't we? And data can cause stress. Athletes a lot. When I was working in Olympic sport, they're going, but my Whoop says I'm 67% recovered. And you're like, well, actually, for most people, that's quite good. I'm not saying you want to be there all the time, but it's actually not bad. But putting numbers on it then gives you different things. And it's then people, injury becomes an opportunity to look at all these other bits that you're not working on, which is exactly what you were saying before about the injury and how you went. It's a common journey that people go on. But then exploring it with the right practitioners makes a difference about then what that outcome for you, and whether that's a practice you're going to continue or totally bin forever, or just be, like you say, park it, come back round to it later. Understanding what that landscape looks like. I think more people are engaged with that. I know we've spoken a lot in the past around corporates and what does a corporate athlete need? How do they balance their life? And they often get to a point where they are broken, which is the type of individual that you were talking about before, like why people come and see you. They live in a concrete jungle. They don't walk around with, no shoes on, feeling grounded and hugging trees. I've seen you hug a tree, Richie. It's okay. I loved it. So it's that engagement piece and knowing where to go. And I think that's what you're doing brilliantly in terms of raising awareness of what good practice in the space looks like, so that it isn't woo-woo like you were saying. There is a place for that. I'm not saying that there isn't, but it was interesting posting today for literally a couple of hours before we started doing this, the fact that we were doing it and the number of healthcare practitioners that were super experienced who'd actually had some health crisis, the number of people who'd mentioned who had, say, cancer or a big cardiovascular event, and how they're then really engaged with what wellness can offer. In the broadest sense, is it just go outside for a fresh air walk? Or is it engaging in maybe some more tech or breathwork or some of the other wonderful gadgets and bits of science that they have here? So I think it's going to be really interesting, isn't it, in terms of where things go next. Centres like this are opening up, but people need to have that understanding of how to use it and when to use it and why they're using it and what they want to get out of it.
I'll just, I guess, encourage people to not overcomplicate things. I would say some of the most profound changes and impacts and transformations I see are when like a guy I met today, the biggest shift for him was waking up half an hour early just to go outside and have his coffee, sat out looking at his garden.
Right.
And that became his ritual. His blood pressure, he looked at the markers, he had an amazing doctor, he had loads of private help. He said the biggest thing is that I feel a bit better because I'm not rushing as soon as I wake up, grabbing my phone, and I'm stopping. I'm leaving my phone inside, I'm having my coffee outside, and I'm just breathing. And he almost broke down in tears. And this is a guy that, when I first met him, there's absolutely no chance he'd show me any kind of emotion like that. And that's fresh in my head for myself. I've had a chat with him this afternoon, but I feel like a lot of people are looking for this euphoric shift or massive transformation, or having to do like 4 classes a week and tick all these boxes. Whereas sometimes you just need to audit where these gaps can happen. You know, people have families, they've got young kids. I hear all the excuses. And it's about prioritizing those gaps and what you do with those moments of time when you can just maybe stop, take a deep breath. Or maybe it is a walk in nature if you can. Maybe it is deciding this week, I'm just going to make sure I nail my nutrition. That's the only thing you do. I know you're all eating. I know you're not just living on air. So how about just making some slightly better choices? And at the end of that week, how do you feel? Absolutely amazing. I've noticed all these changes. Okay, tomorrow, let's try and do the same. Let's try to do the same the next day. And it might sound like a broken record for people in this room who are in the health space. But I think sometimes if you can give one person that one thing that they can latch on to and feel like they're empowered by because they can do it, that becomes a building block that they can start to lay better foundations and better healthy habits. And then maybe it can be more transformational. But if you're not disciplined enough to do that, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Maybe you do need to invest in a proper coach. Maybe you just need to bite the bullet and invest in you making some bigger changes. Come to the BodyLab and book 12 sessions and really go deep and be pushed to the limit. Do you feel better? Oh my God, I don't even recognize myself. There you go. Give them that push. But I feel a lot of people are looking to find this magic pill that won't take much time. But we're looking to change habits that have been ingrained for a lifetime, that have got you to where you are, that you're not happy about. Time to make a change. So empower those people. Give them that little push. Trust them, back me, believe in me. And sometimes just people need that friend and that positive encouragement. So yeah, I won't talk anymore about it, but that's kind of what I'm trying to preach. And sometimes I am that person, just to give that person that little push and just know I'm on their shoulder, you know, being your biggest fan.
But it's a conversation we've picked up before around wellness, around accessibility, because from a health equality point of view, what does it cost? All this kind of aspects. So I think that kind of wraps around really nicely too. If you had one practical tip, which you've probably potentially answered, but I'm going to make you do it again. One practical tip that listeners and everyone here tonight could take away, what would that be?
With the one thing, I think I maybe just answered it in terms of not overcomplicating what these daily health and wellness rituals need to be. And sometimes just being more conscious in your life, like being present in what's coming up for you right now, even the bad stuff. Why is that coming up? What message are you getting? What signs are you getting that you're ignoring? And this isn't just for you, this is actually good for maybe your partner, you know, your family, your kids, your relationships at work. Be a human being. And actually just be really present in your own existence. Like, you've got these amazing skills to be a really good person, someone really kind, really helpful. Like, be that person. The world needs more of those people. And I think you can be doing good in the smallest of ways, in the simplest of ways. And I think when you leave today, and maybe people are thinking about it right now, actually I could be a bit better. I have been a bit negative. Or I could have done more there. Okay, well, try that tomorrow. And I think you can start to really feel sense of purpose and joy, and you can sort of pat yourself on the back and be proud. And these things compound in other areas of your life. And And because I know everyone's breathing, if you could be more mindful of your breath, maybe you get that feedback that you're feeling a bit anxious and you're a bit wound up. Okay, I need to take a little moment. Richie said to take a break. Take a breather, slow down. And in London, especially, with all the noise and all the distractions and the pace of life, it's no wonder people feel so overwhelmed and stress is so high all the time. We don't notice these things. Easy for me because I live in West Dorset and I'm, in this nice peaceful place, which I'm trying to bring the energy into London when I come here. But it's those tools and it's that mentality that allow me to survive in London and not feel overwhelmed, because I feel like I'm walking slower than everybody else. I'm taking it in. I'm trying to smile without being creepy and all these little things. and I get a few funny looks, but I'm just trying to be, positive and present and take it all in. And sometimes that's nice to do, so you really appreciate where you are rather than just like next. So maybe that's a long-winded answer, but I feel like it's in the simple things.
One, but that's great.
I mean, both of you are so good at talking. I think you can criticise each other.
I know.
All good.
Getting something that resonates. So, that makes sense to me.
Okay. So because we've got a wonderful live audience, we're going to go for 2 quick questions. Anybody in the audience want to ask a question of Richie? Go for it.
So you spoke about being rock bottom almost for you, and how that was the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also speaking a lot about the everyday person who's not necessarily rock bottom, and they're coping okay, they're surviving. Mm-hmm. But then we're speaking about this concept of thriving, which you're speaking about.
Yeah.
So how does the person who's doing okay and bumbling along, how do we communicate to those people, which is probably the majority, how do we get them to engage in this process and potentially thrive?
Great question. I love the word thrive. And that's probably something I would say is what I would bring up in conversation. If somebody was searching for something or you're wanting to add more value, do you feel like you're thriving? And we can ask ourselves the same question. I know I'm thriving in my own way, but I know I've got another level I can reach. Now I'm feeling better and I'm in more control of my life. Let's say I am that person who's doing all right, but I know I'm capable of more. What is that going to take? How much do I want it? So my question would be like, do you want more? Do you feel like you're capable of more? What do you notice in your life that could be better? And then if the answer is yes, or in this area of my life, I'd then try to find something really simple and actionable that they feel they're capable of, that they're confident enough to try, and see if it improves their life in some way. And then that might become their new norm. And if I'm being honest, this is the conversation I have with most of my clients. They're all doing pretty well, but they're either had a health scare, or they think they've had this life crisis, or they've seen someone else doing something a little bit better. They're interested in that, so I'm going to encourage them. But it's about choosing which doorway I open for them, which path I steer them down. So in a roundabout way, I am that person. And I ask myself that question quite a lot. Can I do more? Am I happy where I am? Can I level up? And I think that's important to all be aware of that question, because we do get complacent. Life is about thriving for hopefully forever, for as long as possible, and living forever. So if you don't ask yourself, what can I be doing better? You're just going to stay stuck, or you're going to stay in that habit and that routine. So in a long question, hopefully that's provided more context, but I would say, what do you want? Are you happy? Can you do more? What's the next step to make that happen?
Can I add something? I talk about this as like curiosity of life and curiosity of everything, but from a kind of even just a physio perspective, we talk to our physios, and they're like, you may have set a goal with someone of what they want to achieve, and then they achieve it, and it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be discharged at that point. It's like, okay, so what do you want to do next, or where do you want to go? So we only know what our limits are until we kind of within the context of where life is at that point, and then you reach that, and you're like, oh, okay, well, there's something more, because we never really fulfill our own potential mentally or physically, really.
Did that kind of answer your question in a way?
Physio too.
Yeah.
So you can relate to that part, yeah.
Yeah.
So I get that.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was kind of looking for, really.
Okay, so just adding on what your point was there, really great point, because if that person can't think of something that they want to improve, like they're kind of cool, they're all right, they're doing plenty of training, they're all right, they're good. This is why people hopefully seek out challenges, while they do a marathon, while they do a CrossFit workout or whatever it is. because it pushes them to have to adapt. And adaptation is part of growth. And that's not just physical growth, but it's mental and emotional growth. Someone overcoming a challenge they didn't know they needed to have. So if they've reached a certain point where they're all right, you can get complacent. You can start to relax, you let off the gas, your body adapts, so it's no longer feeling challenged. So for us to evolve and grow, not just physically, the tissue that we need to stress out a little bit, the muscles that we need to train with resistance training, we've got to find that edge for them to grow. Same with emotional growth and mental growth. Becoming more resilient means we've got to set the bar a little bit higher. So we should all be looking for that. But some people want to jump a little bit higher than others. It's about what that person is willing to step up to and challenge themselves with, which should never end, in my eyes. Good question.
I think that question was so good.
Let's wrap it up there.
Let's wrap it up there. Thank you, Richie. You've been amazing. I knew this would be a great conversation, and it's not just a one-off with yourself. It always is ongoing, and good learning points for everybody, I'm sure, to take away and learn from. Richie's very kindly now offered everyone to have a breathwork session downstairs. So if you want to come and experience the session with Richie, there's an opportunity for that downstairs. Following on from that, there's the infrared sauna that you could use, as well as cryotherapy. So thank you very much, Richie, for coming.
Honoured. Thank you for having me.
Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.